The expressed views, statements, and opinions by the guests on the Risk Advisor program made either during the show or on the corresponding social media and blog outlets are not necessarily the view or opinions of Baxter Productions, Inc. or any of its affiliates, associates, or others who are part of this production. Information provided during this broadcast is for news purposes only and does not constitute a remedy for any of the discussed risks presented.
Have you ever considered buying a drone? If you're like millions of others around the world, you may have already gotten one for the holidays. But is there a security risk to all these drones flying around? We're going to find out today on theriskadvisor.com.
The Risk Advisor. You're listening to the Risk Advisor podcast. The Risk Advisor highlights topics about the most important personal security and safety issues today. This is for you, your family, and your loved ones. Experts alert to trends, tactics, and techniques used against us. You can be more aware and more informed to stay safe in this ever-changing, complicated place we call life. And now your host, media's go-to guy, Sal Lefriere.
Welcome to theriskadvisor.com. Today we are with Joseph Galasso with a career spanning over 20 years in law enforcement. Joe is the president and founder of JGA Security Solutions, an advisory firm specializing in security and risk management. He recently retired as the Senior Vice President, Director of Security and Life Safety at SL Green Realty Corporation, an S&P 500 company and New York City's largest office landlord. There, he oversaw all aspects of SL Green's comprehensive security and life safety initiatives. Prior to that, he served as a special agent in charge of the Criminal Investigation Field Office for the United States Department of Treasury in Boston. Welcome, Joe.
Thanks, Sal. Thanks for having me.
So, Joe, everybody wants to talk about drones. Everybody's out buying drones today. Talk to us a little bit about drones. Talk about how that's connecting in with security and what the problems are for security today.
Well, right now, unfortunately, security is not set up to address the threat of drones. Security is basically perimeter-based on the ground floor, whether it be our security officers, our access control, even our cameras. They point down, they don't point up. The drones give the bad guy the ability to fly above our perimeter security, and that is what's upsetting to most people in law enforcement and in the security business.
Before we even get to the point of how do we defend against them and stop them, we got to get to the point of being able to identify them, or at least that seems to be the first problem with it. They can carry a payload. They're high in the air. Is there technology today, or is technology taking steps and advances for us to be able to get to that?
There is technology today to detect the drones flying around your airspace. It's readily available. Unfortunately, most people right now, since they still view these things as toys, they don't view them as a threat. Not many companies are employing that kind of technology. But there is technology to detect them, and there's also technology to mitigate the threat and take them out. Right now, only law enforcement, FBI, and Homeland Security has been authorized to deal with the threat. But there is technology out there right now that can take these things out of the air.
Good. To talk about what drones can do and about the technology, we spoke to a technical expert about this, Gregory Wabshnak. Greg currently leads the Wireless Solutions Group at AES Metro New York. It's the largest privately held integration company, and he works with wireless solutions including distributed antenna systems, Wi-Fi, and drone technologies. We're talking about risks. Why are they more prevalent today than they were in the past?
One is the just sheer number of drones out there now than there were previously. The quantity of drones that are in the air is more than doubled in 2 years. 2 years ago there was roughly 600,000 drones in the air, and now there's in excess of 1.2 million.
We're starting to see them being used as weapons, and the threat of them being used as weapons is coming up more and more. Mass destruction.
We've seen them used as weaponized in the Middle East, in the war zones there and stuff. We haven't seen a weaponized threat here in the U.S. yet. I know there was a kid in Connecticut who put a gun on one, was shooting, and they shut him down and put him in jail. But we haven't seen a weaponized threat yet. That's a good thing.
But it's just a matter of time before that happens.
Unfortunately, I got to agree with that.
Let's talk about the different industries real quick, and how the risks that are posed for each industry. Talk to me about aviation.
The problem with aviation is, the drones, can bounce off the plane. They can get sucked into the engine. They'll take a plane down if it gets sucked into the engine. I can tell you that, between Kennedy and LaGuardia, on a weekly basis, they pull 15 drones off the tarmac.
Wow.
Why? Because there's parks right next to the airport.
Wow.
Is a nefarious act or just a guy who lost control of his drone? But what it can do to a plane, take a passenger jet out with hundreds of people on it, that's a big issue.
And take it down. Sporting events.
Sporting events we've already seen. There was a couple of years ago a Carolina game. Drones interfered with the game. They had to stop it because it kept buzzing the crowd, and nobody knew for sure what was going on. Was this thing weaponized? Did it have anything on there that could do mass damage? Did it have a bomb? Did it have anthrax? Did it have anything? Nobody knew.
Smuggling.
Been many times prisons throughout the United States where contraband is being dropped in over the walls. And with the relative cost of these things being under $1,000 and with payloads of 4 or 5 pounds, dropping in drugs, tobacco, guns, and giving up the drone, they don't care. They got the contraband in.
Illegal photo and video.
Constantly. It's like
celebrity peeping
paparazzis, peeping toms, videoing boardroom meetings, getting info prior to stock breaks and whatnot. There's all kinds of information that they can gather through their cameras.
30 seconds, government.
The government. Use or defense. The government uses them and has been using them for decades as in a war zone. We've got kids that sit in Nevada that operate the drones and carry out missions day in and day out.
Okay. So, Joe, what are the risks within the next 30 seconds? What are the real risks that are on the horizon? What are the things that have most people really worried about, at least in law enforcement or in government service?
Well, first of all, you can put a payload on a drone, an explosive payload that can cause damage. It's not a weapon of mass destruction, but it can still cause significant damage nonetheless, and certainly cause loss of life.
And it's almost undefendable.
At this point, yeah.
It's almost undefendable, right? We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about just how big of a problem they can be. We'll be right back.
Advanced Electronic Solutions, Inc., or AES, is a leading privately held systems integrator out of New York. AES's track record of developing solutions for a wide range of customers has given us the opportunity to gain a deep insight into key industries and business sectors. We understand the unique challenges encountered as you move towards ensuring that the systems chosen enable your organization to function effectively and reduce risk. Consequently, we provide a comprehensive array of solutions which include access control, fire and life safety, CCTV, datacom, intercom, distributed antenna systems, auxiliary radio communication systems, IP video, cybersecurity, and proactive health monitoring. If you are interested in finding out more about our solutions provided, please visit www.nyaes.com or email info@nyaes.com.
Workplace violence, terrorism, identity theft, cyberbullying, and stalking. It's not a matter of if they will happen, it's a matter of when. The security world is too complicated to do it alone. You need a security advisor. Call Protective Countermeasures now. Protective Countermeasures has been providing security consulting to Fortune 500 companies for nearly 20 years. Call today, 914-576-8706, protectivecountermeasures.com.
You're watching The Risk Advisor, and we're back with Joe Galasso of JGA Security Solutions talking about drones and the issues they can create for security. So, Joe, one of the things that comes up in research in this is talking about over 1 million drones have been sold. And if we got those kind of risks, the problem just seems to be getting away from us, and it just seems to be getting too big right now. Talk to us about the million drones. How does all of this break down?
So I think as of January, over 1.2 million drones have been sold. Only 878,000 have been registered. These are private and hobby use. There's also an additional 122,000 drones that have been registered for commercial use. But again, the figures are that there's probably another 200,000 that haven't been registered. So we're talking about a wide-scale problem.
And in a lot of ways, this sort of registers with me that we're talking the same thing like guns, right?
Correct.
It's,
As a security professional, I worry not as much about the registered drones, but I'm looking at, and you made a good point, it's analogous to gun control. The people who have nefarious intentions, they're not going to register these things. And so that's what I worry about, that there's hundreds of thousands of drones that are out there not registered that could be used for, as we spoke earlier, for some nefarious purposes.
Some of the smaller drones, some of the more what we've been classifying sort of as toys, can carry up to a half a pound.
That's correct. Again, you got to look at the new face of terrorism post 9/11. It's geared towards smaller lone wolf attacks. So they may not be on the scale of 9/11, but they're deadly nonetheless. So yeah, 4 or 5 pounds of explosives detonated in a sporting event, you're going to have loss of life, many people injured. And that's what our concern is. Since 9/11, most of the attacks have not been well organized, but they've been carried out by lone wolves. As we already said, we have over 1.2 million drones registered by private individuals. And God knows how many are not registered.
And some of the capabilities that they come with that doesn't even have to be modified is a 4K camera.
That's correct.
Which is a high resolution camera.
Right. So that camera could be used for surveillance, for espionage, corporate espionage. If I'm a celebrity, that could be used to spy on me. It can be used to document meetings that are taking place, corporate meetings, mergers and acquisitions. And that's a simple camera on a drone that's basically a toy.
Some of the new technology, and doing research for the show, some of the new technology that we were hearing about and reading about is the ability to be able to hack using a drone.
Right. So one of the things, you have to get close to a data center to be able to hack into that system. Most data centers are very well secured. But now the drone can fly, again, above that perimeter security and get close enough to the data center to maybe hack into that system.
We talk about is it Moore's law, about technology advancing every 6 months, doubles every 6 months.
That's correct.
Right. So we look at the drones that are coming out. We look at what their capabilities are, what they have today, and what we're realizing is that the law just doesn't seem to be keeping up with technology, and that's something we've seen in the past.
Right.
What's your thoughts on that?
Again, as much as I would like to think that we can rectify this problem through regulations, the fact is that's not going to, as a security professional, that's not going to solve the problem. So the regulations that are currently being looked at are more for safety. It's like gun laws. Safety, registration, background checks, that's all well and good, but it doesn't prevent someone who has nefarious intentions to getting a gun and, creating a mass shooting event and taking a lot of, big loss of life. So I don't think the regulation is the way that's to go in terms of solving this problem. It's really going to fall on a partnership of law enforcement and the private sector. And that partnership together is going to have to deal with this problem just the way we do now with private security and law enforcement, to deal with the threat of guns.
And inevitably, when we see situations like this, what we're looking at is sort of this confluence of agencies that have to get involved. And that's where the stumbling blocks really come into play, right? Yeah, I'm guessing on this, we're looking at 3 different agencies. We're looking at the FCC, because it's a radio control device. We're talking about the FAA because it's a type of aircraft that, and flying, it's a flying instrument. You would assume that they would want it. And then ultimately you have law enforcement having to get into it. And inevitably those things become problematic because you have three different sets of organizations, each with a totally different intention. Everybody wants to get to the same place, but they just, getting there is the most difficult.
Right. Well, I think, it's really not as big a problem because the FAA and the FCC are going to concentrate on the law. They're going to concentrate on writing the regulations. And the law enforcement is going to concentrate on mitigating the threat. And that may eventually pass down to private security also, just the way now you, as a private security vendor, you can hire licensed armed guards. So currently the FAA, the FCC, they'll work on regulations. Law enforcement, both federal, state, and local, will work on mitigating it. And depending on how big the threat becomes, it may pass on to private security vendors also.
Do you think there's a window, a time that we would wind up seeing that? And do you think that legislation ultimately will catch up with it, procedures will catch up with it? Are we looking at maybe 1 year, 2 years, 5 years?
I think you mentioned earlier Moore's Law. Technology doubles every 6 months. So I don't think we'll ever catch up. I think we'll always be behind the curve in terms of regulation. That's... I wish the answer was yes, we'll catch up, but I think we'll always be a step behind.
Okay. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to go to a commercial, and when we come back, we're going to talk about a little bit more about the risks and what we could do to prevent these attacks from taking place.
From the files of New York detective Frank Santasola, a riveting murder mystery novel, The Garbage Murders. After an illicit liaison with his mistress, the owner of a private sanitation company in New York is murdered. Enter the life of Detective Frank Miranda, one of a few men in law enforcement to infiltrate the Italian mob and bring to justice some of the biggest names in organized crime history. On Amazon Books in paperback and Kindle editions.
TheGarbageMurders.com.
From the files of New York detective Frank Santasola comes a riveting murder mystery novel, The Garbage Murders. After an illicit liaison with his mistress, the owner of a private sanitation company in New York is murdered. His wife, aware of the affair, first believes it could be the motivation for the killing. But when her truck drivers are attacked by her husband's associates, family values get questioned. Enter the life of Detective Frank Miranda, one of a few men in law enforcement assigned to infiltrate the Italian mob and bring to justice some of the biggest names in organized crime history. Be taken into the world of an infiltrator and the personal decisions and sacrifices he made daily. Guaranteed to touch all your emotions, sadness, anger, love, and laughter. Available on Amazon Books in both paperback and Kindle editions.
TheGarbageMurders.com.
You're watching The Risk Advisor, and we're back with Gregory Wabshnak. Greg?
Sal, how are you?
Doing good. Let's talk about the trying to control the risks from drones. So let's talk a little bit about the technology that you guys are actually deploying and what you have. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, the drone sphere itself is pretty much in its infancy, especially the counter drone measures. We've teamed up with a company called D-Drone, which we can call the tallest third grader because the industry is so new. What we have the ability to do is through various sensors, we can monitor activity inside a specific area, and then we can triangulate given the various sensors that we place in the facility, and we can narrow it down and bring it back to the user.
That's great. So start us off from a particular industry would be doing, let's say, research and development, something along those lines. There's an intellectual property theft that they believe is occurring. There is some form of a technical means of compromise. And so they have a concern, and somewhere along the line they have this belief that we may have a drone out there. Talk to us about that.
Well, the first thing we do when we get into a discussion with a potential customer is let's identify if you do have a drone problem. And what we'll do is we'll set up a test site where we use one sensor, and this sensor has the ability to monitor the airspace in a 1 mile circumference, and it'll record all activity coming in and out of that area. Now, the drones all have a unique identifier on them, being since they're radio controlled, so we're able to not only tell who's coming, that there's a drone entering the airspace, we can identify each specific drone.
So is that similar to like an MAI number in a computer?
Pretty much, like your MAI number, your IMEI number on your cell phone, it's a unique identifier that belongs to that unit.
Okay.
So that way, when we sit back down with the client and we can tell them that you have a drone problem. Not only do you have a drone problem, you have a particular problem because you have a couple of drones that are coming in here constantly. Why are they coming into your airspace constantly? That's only a question that you can answer. But what we can tell you is how you can prevent it from happening. How you can stop it but not prevent it. And stopping it means identifying the drones, identifying where they're flying from, and coming back to them either with your own physical security or with local law enforcement to address the perpetrators.
Talk to us a little bit, because in a lot of ways I'm still a little bit of a technical geek. I enjoy that sort of stuff. So talk us through a little bit about, so you have this sensor that picks up that'll identify the drones that are flying around and let us know that there's a problem. What's that next step right off of that?
Well, the next step is admitting that you have a problem.
Well, once we get past that,
okay.
We know we got a problem.
We know we have a problem. So
I want to talk about the gadgets. Give me the
gadgets. The gadgets are various other sensors, okay, and using 4 to 5 sensors on a property, we can triangulate and narrow down that user, okay, because he does have the unique identifier of his RF signal. We can triangulate and bring it right back to within feet of where the user is.
How big of an area are we talking? Are we talking like one on each corner of a building, or are we talking about over a large span of space?
It depends on the space. So if we have a large campus area, we can spread the sensors out further. If it's a single building, then the sensors will be more concentrated.
So in a larger campus setting where they may feel that they have pretty decent security because they have access control of cars that are coming in and people who are on the campus.
They've got everybody on the ground, but nobody in the air.
But nothing in the air. So we're talking about multiples of acres that you could be...
We can cover large campuses. We're doing one study now where the campus sits on 21 acres of land. They have an R&D site, and when we were talking to them, they're like, we don't worry about the R&D. There's no windows. It's like, no, but you have a door, and we know who comes and goes. Yeah. So do we have to worry about PETA? Do we have to worry about some other wacko organization that may have an issue with their industry and they want to do something to them? Then there's always the network concerns, because now these things can carry payloads. They can carry spoofing devices where they can spoof your network, because if you have Wi-Fi, they can get you. If you have a cell phone, they can get your emails on. They can clone your phone, and now they've got a way into the network. There's so many different things that they can do. And on a corporate level, protecting your intellectual property and the safety of your employees has got to be key. When you can see who's coming and going, and they can record your comings and goings, and they can follow you into the parking lot and see what vehicle you're driving, and you happen to have maybe in a position where they don't like what you're doing as far as your research and development, you become a target, and the company has a responsibility to protect you.
Well, not only that, but even just from the theft of the intellectual property. I mean, that's one of the things. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
That's a huge concern.
And traditionally, companies that were interested in were looking into intellectual property theft would want to conduct the investigation, thinking that it was internal, or thinking that it was the janitor or somebody that was stealing something out of the garbage or the waste baskets, and that there were technical means of compromise that were done with bugging. Right, somebody would be hacking into a phone system or doing something like that. The ability to not have to get into the facility, to be able to do it remote, is just something that it's one of those risks that just becomes so much larger.
Yeah, and one of the things, technology being technology, that makes it easier is every company now has Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is the easiest of the networks to penetrate. And with a Raspberry Pi, which is a miniature computer that can sit on board, just about any drone, they can spoof your network. All right, through your Wi-Fi.
Even if you have password protected,
you can have password protection all you want. It's just like anything else. The good guys are always catching up to the bad guys. Okay, it's not the other way around. Okay, you take a perfectly in good intended, like they started with drones, were perfectly well intended. Okay, and then it takes somebody to say, hey, we can use this for the bad stuff too, and they go beyond that, and that's part of the problem with the laws and regulations, because everybody thinks we're all good. We got 1.2 million out there, 878,000 of them are registered, 200,000 are not. Well, that could be just a guy who didn't get around to it, or could it be the guy who's got something else on his mind?
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Well, thanks for coming in. We appreciate it. Greg, how do we get in touch with you if
you can just go right to info@aes.com, and then that'll be directed right to me. Okay, that's the easiest way to do it, because if I give you my email address, big long last name
that I can't pronounce. All right. Well, thanks, Charles, for coming in. We really appreciate it. We'd like to thank Charles and Joe for coming in and spending time with us today. I'd like to remind you, if you have a question or a comment, please write us at guests@theriskadvisor.com. You can follow us on our social media accounts, and you can find that link at our website, theriskadvisor.com. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you tune in next week.
We hope you enjoyed this show. If you have any questions, would like to appear on the program, or recommend a guest, contact us at theriskadvisor.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. View and listen to us on iTunes, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Roku TV. Tune in live on various local radio stations. Find links to all of these and listen to past shows at theriskadvisor.com. Thank you for listening. Stay safe, and join us again next week for another episode of The Risk Advisor. Protective Countermeasures has been providing security consulting to Fortune 500 companies for nearly 20 years. Call today, 914-576-8706. ProtectiveCountermeasures.com.
TheRiskAdvisor.com.